Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey here with Anthony Broom. Chris Ballas with a microphone issue, not able to make it today. I think people wish my microphone went out because then they wouldn't have to hear the idiotic things I have to say every week, but that's besides the point. He'll be back hopefully on the next show as well, but we got a lot to get into. Sherrone Moore spoke with the media this week. A lot coming out of that, including on the quarterback. Jim Harbaugh no longer as the honorary captain for Michigan's opener against Fresno State. Sherrone Moore is looking forward to his text messages being released. We have other takeaways from the press conference. And we also got to taste some of the food, not the alcohol options, but the food at the Big House that will be served in the concessions. We'll talk about that and what is coming in terms of alcohol at the Big House. And there's football next week. We'll get into all of that here on the Wolverine.com podcast. Before we get into it, make sure to like the video if you're watching on YouTube. If you are excited for Michigan season to start, hit that thumbs up button. Give us a comment as to what you're most excited about. And as always, head to the Wolverine.com for all of our coverage. You can get premium access to the message board, get behind the paywall on the articles, fall camp intel, and much more. 2 months for just $1 if you use the promo code UM1. That's UM in the numeral 1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. Anthony, Sherrone Moore talks this week, and of course, there was a lot to get into. A couple of NCAA situations, his text messages that he deleted with Connor Stallions, but the most important on-field development regarding the quarterback competition. And the update was basically no update. And he says they've all been very good. They've all had their days. One guy's been good. One guy's been really good. The other guy's been even better. So not a front runner, kind of an even playing field right now. We'll see how this goes into this week, next week, and then game week. He later said, when asked about a timeline, that this could go into game week or even game day. Your thoughts?
Well, we're entering week 3. And if memory serves me correct, and I'm not holding everyone to the standard that was J.J. McCarthy, but 2 camps ago when he really made his push to earn the starting job or at least extend the battle into the regular season, it was about this time where we started to see that sort of separation for him. So really week 3 of camp feels like separation week. It feels like across the board, the week that guys really kind of put a stamp on their job. You start to get a feel for, your practices over the next week, 10 days, sort of start to have a dress rehearsal feel to them. So for me, at quarterback, I'm so interested in seeing where it goes from here because we'll see what happens with Jack Tuttle and his shoulder thing. I think it's a shoulder, right? Is that what he's still dealing with?
Upper body.
Whatever he's dealing with, we'll see if he gets back into the mix and makes a push. We'll see if Alex Orji is able to kind of continue to sort of smooth out the peaks and valleys in his game. We'll see if Davis Warren can continue to be the best passer, pure passer of the 3 based on the camp intel. So not surprised. Also, at this point, I think there's going to be a lot of mystery surrounding that. At least, even if 2 of these guys play in the Fresno State game, I could see this kind of being a lingering mystery that goes into Texas week because, there's the chess match of making sure Texas is caught off guard too. So in the here and now, I believe them when they say they don't have a guy. I think they've been pretty forthright about who leads at other positions. When we talk about offensive line battles, talk about like a couple weeks ago when Sherrone Moore says that Jair Hill leads at number 2 corner. I think if they had a guy that led, they would probably say it, but quarterback's still a little bit different because he's the maestro of the offense, and knowing that this offense can take a lot of different shapes and forms depending on who's back there, I think they'll continue to kind of keep it a bit of a secret.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting because I don't think I didn't expect anything different than what exactly we got, even if there was a front runner at this point. And, I tend to believe there probably isn't, especially if Jack Tuttle is or was at one point during camp limited physically due to an injury, because that certainly factors in if he can get back healthy and then make his own push. It'd be kind of, it'd be too early to say that, somebody else is the favorite or, is going to win the job or something like that. But you said it. The offense is going to be different depending on who the quarterback is. So keeping that close to the vest is important. And, partly because they play Texas in week 2, partly because you have an opener against Fresno State. There's always kind of the element of surprise in any sort of opener since there's no preseason in college football. So you want to preserve that as much as you can. Now there's that balance as well, though, of a team rallying around a guy who is named the starter. The public can kind of move on and rally around somebody and understand who's going to be behind center. So there are benefits to either approach, but I think this year, given how open it has been, this is the way to go if you're Sherrone Moore. Again, even if there was a front runner, I don't know that he would be saying that publicly. He has remained very open as to when that announcement could come, if there even is an announcement, right? I mean, we talked about it probably the other day, I think, at least in the last couple of weeks. I mean, the 2010 opener against UConn, when Denard just came out there and was the starter after Tate Forcier was the starter the year before, and they didn't name anybody until he ran out there, with the first team offense. I think that's a possibility. I think they're going to play multiple quarterbacks, likely against Fresno State, potentially also against Texas. So do you think this goes into the season, into game day, as far as what the plan actually is going to be?
I feel like it might. I feel like it truly has a chance to do that. And, Fresno State is no slouch. Like, it's not like you're playing UConn or Hawaii or someone to start the year where you're favored by 45 points. So, I mean, you need to take that opponent seriously, but, there's also, it also comes with knowing that whoever, like, from their perspective, they want to be able to be comfortable with whoever they throw out there. So they might be comfortable playing 2 guys against Fresno State. I think that, again, if we go into the Texas game where the platoon is still kind of the plan, it might change the way I view that game or, the predictions for that game in that week. But I think that it's tried and true. Like, if they decide to use the quote unquote Michigan method to determine who this quarterback is going to be, and it stretches into game week, I think that's okay. I think they can probably beat Fresno State by a few scores, regardless of who's out there. But I think you really want to make sure you get this right ahead of the Texas game, because these are playoff games, basically. Texas week 2 is a playoff game. USC week 4 is a playoff game. Your trip to Washington week 6, to me, that has the same feel as a playoff game. So, you want to make the best decision for not just the season opener, but the long term of your season too. So to me, if it goes into the regular season, I think I'm okay with that. I think people are going to be uncomfortable because you want to hear, this is the time of year you want to hear that someone has just stepped up, grabbed the job, and now you have 2 weeks to go into the regular season where so-and-so is taking first team reps. I don't know that there's been that separation yet. I know that they're comfortable with the guys they have, but don't put a deadline on yourself if it needs to go a little bit longer. So if it does, I think you gotta trust Sherrone Moore and trust Kirk Campbell in that.
And if those are playoff games, there is a loser's bracket then to this playoff, because you can still work your way back in. And look, even if you lose against Texas, which would be less than ideal, you still are unblemished in terms of your Big Ten record, and you can earn an automatic first-round bye if you win the Big Ten. But it's obviously a huge game and could set the tone and give them confidence going forward if they're able to win it. But, we'll see how the quarterback competition plays out. I do know another quarterback who will not be in the game. One of the best terms in football is next man up, sometimes next woman up. And that's exactly what's happening with Michigan's honorary captain on August 31st against Fresno State. It's next man up, next woman up. Instead of Jim Harbaugh, it will be his father, Jack Harbaugh, and his mother, Jackie Harbaugh, as the honorary captain. He called Sherrone Moore on Monday and said that he wants to be in the foxhole with his team. He said that he doesn't want to make it look like he's taking a deep, long bow 1 week before he starts his career in the regular season, at least, as the Los Angeles Chargers head coach. And as Sherrone Moore said, that's, in true Coach Harbaugh fashion. Obviously, there was a lot of blowback after the news came out that he was going to be the honorary captain, even though that decision had been made in either January or February at some point in the winter, according to Sherrone Moore. And, even Ward Manuel said at Sherrone Moore's introductory press conference that he wanted to have Jim Harbaugh back as honorary captain for a game. This is the only one that would make sense with his schedule. Their bye week that he could potentially come for, Michigan's in Seattle playing Washington. So it's the only one that would have made sense. I'm not sure we'll see Jim Harbaugh at the Big House this year. But if you watch the Chargers preseason game the other day, which, by the way, I purchased a 1-month subscription to NFL Plus where you can watch any preseason game. I mean, Michigan's got all these rookies. I mean, I want to watch the Chargers. And it was $7. And after watching part of the Chargers preseason game in which they failed to get a first down until the 7th drive, I would like a refund from the NFL, that $7. But I think they got a lot of work to do over there in El Segundo, California. And, it makes sense that Jim Harbaugh doesn't want to make this trip. And obviously you're going to get the people that say this was Michigan backing down or whatever. I really don't see it that way. I do think maybe the backlash and making huge headlines 1 week before his Chargers season starts played into it from a Jim Harbaugh standpoint, but I think they easily would have welcomed him, and now I guess it'll be his parents, and I'm sure they'll get a pretty warm welcome as well.
Yeah, I think ultimately when you take a step back from all of it, it's probably the best move for everyone involved, especially Jim. Jim is a very singular-minded guy, and he uses the foxhole term. Even you talk about the deep long bows. We were at the Chrysler celebration few days after they won the national title, and it seemed like he was kind of uncomfortable taking that bow just 4 or 5 days later. So I'm not surprised by it. It was actually more surprising to maybe hear that was going to happen, or I guess we never heard technically that he agreed to it, but yeah, they'll still honor him. His family will be there. I just think with the temperature of everything, plus, it's not like he retired, like he's coaching an NFL team. I think that's, a big, if I remember correctly, I don't think that's roster cut weekend anymore, but you are still the head coach of an NFL operation. And given everything that's gone on, I think that on his part, it's probably wise to just focus on that, not bring up the past for Michigan, not bring up, what he, some of that other stuff, at least in terms of the national perspective on it. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool. They're going to have an opportunity to celebrate the team. A lot of those guys from last year's team will be back there. And I think, all things considered, that's probably the best way to do all of this. So would have loved to see him there, would have loved the clips, the social media outrage it would have created, because that's always entertaining. But at the end of the day, I think it makes sense for everyone involved to just maybe just back off of that a little bit. Not back off. I mean, it was a Jim Harbaugh decision, but they'll still be celebrated, and he will have some sort of presence there.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be great. And I thought that it was disingenuous and really dishonest, or maybe lazy, because they didn't want to look into the timeline here. Like, just because it came out through Ward Manuel appearing on a podcast, which, by the way, was released before Jim Harbaugh received his notice, or his 4-year show cause from the NCAA, that it was some sort of reaction like, oh, he has a 4-year show cause, now let's bring him back. It's like that was planned for months and months. It has nothing to do with it. So I just thought that the reaction and the conversation, which of course this is how it goes in college football, but was a little ridiculous surrounding it. But too bad. Well, but I guess
the thing of it too,
Harbaugh are a nice consolation prize.
The thing of it too is that Michigan's been sort of piled on a bit for things that look like it was done in bad faith. So who's to say that doing that doesn't, fire up the NCAA to tack on, whatever, as insubordination, because apparently deleting text messages to your coworker is insubordination now. Apparently not remembering what a certain, the events of something that happened is insubordination now. So, I mean, like I said, I just think when you take the wide angle lens to it, as cool, as fun, and kind of as big of an FU to the NCAA it would have been, I think they can kind of have their cake and eat it too, and celebrating what happened while not having, some of the extracurricular stuff attached to it. So it's a bummer. I was rooting to see it, but not all that surprising. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is a singularly focused guy. So not surprised that he's just going to stay in LA and get ready for the season, because I think the Chargers are going to need a lot of help.
When people ask him about things really outside of football this time of year, he usually says something like, I'm just trying to figure out how to get a first down or get the 3 technique blocked. They need to do those things. I know it wasn't the starting offense in the preseason game, but like you said, a lot of work to do. Got to get healthy as well. My Chargers with Justin Herbert being hurt. So, they got that to worry about right now, and another game this week coming up. You mentioned the text messages. We'll move on to that right now. And Sherrone Moore apparently deleted 52 text messages with Connor Stalions the day that media reports came out that Stalions, formerly a staffer, was at the center of the NCAA investigation into Michigan for alleged off-campus scouting. Of course, those ended up being turned over to the NCAA. No serious violation was reported, coming out of this draft of the notice of allegations, leading you to believe, right, that these were just normal text messages with somebody you work with, probably about work or life or family or whatever. Certainly we send a lot of text messages amongst our own staff, and it's much smaller than the amount of people Michigan coaches interact with on a day-to-day basis. Everybody does the same thing at work. And Sherrone Moore says on Tuesday, "I'll just say this. I look forward to them being released, and that's it." Again, not surprising because we had heard that these were pretty much innocuous, but I hope they do get released at some point. It could add some comedic value as well to what these two were talking about potentially right before Stalions ends up becoming, an American, hero and, somebody that everybody knows about.
American hero. That's an interesting way to put it too.
Well, he's a former Marine captain. I mean,
that is true. And we thank him for that service, of course. Yep. Again, there's because Connor Stalions was accused of what he's accused of, and a lot of things done in the shadows, right? Like sending people to games and all this stuff that was going on behind the scenes. He was still an analyst with the football program, which the analysts, if he was still on staff, he could be on the field coaching these guys this year. I don't think people realize the analysts are not.
Imagine how good they'd be if he could coach with all that information he has.
I wonder. These analysts aren't just like interns that go grab Sherrone Moore's coffee or Jesse Minter's coffee or pick up their DoorDash order, which it kind of would be funny if some of those text messages were like, "Hey, what do you want? What do you want from Mr. Spots today? Or what do you want from Maize and Blue Deli?" Like that's kind of funny to think about. But he was an employee of the football program. These guys assist, with putting in game plans. People don't want to hear it, but would I be surprised if there was conversations about the signs they have for this week or the scouting they have for this week? I guess no, I wouldn't be, but that's not illegal either. The thing in question was the means by which that information was obtained. So, if there's nothing in there that is a smoking gun, which if there was, we'd have heard about it already, like weeks ago, months ago, probably. When Sherrone says, "I look forward to those text messages coming out," unless you are a brazen, puff your chest out person that just says things to look tough, which I don't think Sherrone Moore is, I think this is ultimately going to be just a big fat nothing burger, to borrow the phrase from the other scandals. So
with bacon
and an egg on it too, if you're going to do the breakfast burger. So
I was looking at the menu the other day at Benny's. There's you can add an egg, I think, but that bacon cheeseburger, no egg, by the way. I'm thinking of getting it.
Hey, we'll have to try it out. Again, I'm not so much, and it comes down to this. And I did a national interview, earlier in the day. This is Thursday we're recording, and the guy we did the show with was basically like, you don't delete text messages if there wasn't something you're embarrassed about or something illicit in there. And I just think it might be the guy gets named, and we talked about this too. Guy gets named in this scandal, and you're like, whoa, don't want anything from him on my phone. So
100%.
Again, how do you? I get the optics of it. I just don't know how you punish based on you still received that information you were looking for, and if there's nothing there, which we're to assume there isn't, because that would have been reported, because everybody seems to know everything before before the public does these days, then I just don't know what we're doing here. Like, and if they're still looking to punish based on, well, it looked shady, or like, there's just no way that
That's
if
kind of
you're
what they
Michigan,
do.
yeah, I mean, there's just no way that a suspension can be on the table, because it's not. If they want to do the whole head coach responsibility thing again, they can't, because he wasn't the head coach at the time. So to me, again, I just don't know. I mean, they are the judge, jury, and executioner, so they can make up whatever rules they want when it comes to handing down punishment. But I just don't. Why it does not compute to me.
Yeah, and it would be insane to say what Sherrone Moore said. Look forward to them being released, and then them being like screenshots of signs from recorded. Like, it's clearly nothing's gonna come from it. So I think Michigan fans were glad to hear him actually say that out loud, even though we've kind of said similar, that from what we've heard and from the indication of the draft of the notice of allegations, there's really nothing there on Sherrone Moore other than deleting the text, which I'm sure he would admit at this point was a mistake. Anything else from Sherrone Moore's press conference that stood out? I do love the quote I wanted to read. This was about the national perception of the culture and all this stuff going on and the NCAA investigations. He said, when you're at the bottom, they don't respect you. When you're in the middle, they ignore you. When you're at the top, they hate you. So we're just going to keep rolling. I thought the Michigan fan base really enjoyed that one. He named a couple guys who have really impressed and kind of taken big steps forward this fall camp. Senior edge TJ Guy, senior right guard Giovanni El-Hadi. I think that's very encouraging. He said the O-line's coming together. As long as I'm here, we're going to be good up front. We're going to be violent, physical, tough, relentless, all the things you want. He said that they're about 9 or 10 deep right there, which is a little better than what Kirk Campbell said coming into camp, which was they're about 7 or 8 deep. So they've added a little bit there. Anything else that stood out to you from what Sherrone Moore said this week?
No, just again, just a wide angle view of it. Just seems incredibly comfortable in his position now. I know the first few times we talked to him, don't want to say it was a deer in the headlights, but just I think a lot going on early on this offseason, whether it be the opening press conference, whether it be the spring ball press conference, which again, still fine. But I think just everything we've heard is that, yeah, all the faces are new, but everything feels the same. It's just a passing of the baton. So I don't know what that means for on-field stuff, but in terms of the work that they've got done over the last 3 weeks or so, and really throughout the offseason, it seems like they're in good hands. I think that's the best way I could put it is, before we have the benefit of seeing what a Sherrone Moore coached football team looks like, not a Jim Harbaugh football team coached by Sherrone Moore on a Saturday. Until we have those data points, I mean, the jury's still kind of out, but I just feel like in a lot of the intangible aspects of being a college football head coach, I think he's met and maybe even surpassed expectations to a certain extent. So he will ultimately be judged by what happens on the field. We're a little over 2 weeks out from our first set of data points on that front, and I'm just excited to see what it looks like, because it's there. You can tell, like, this was, and this may be a Jim Harbaugh thing too, but when they liked their football team, there was like a glow about them when they'd come up to the podium in fall camp. And there are a couple teams where you didn't really have that glow. 2017 was one. I mean, 2020 was just chaos across the board. But when they like what they have, there's usually kind of a presence and a gravitas about them. And I kind of feel that right now. So we'll see what happens. But nothing up, everything that we've talked about, I think is pretty much covers it.
Yeah, in 2020 there was a glare on the screen because it was all over Zoom. You couldn't tell at all. I mean, it seemed like he had a lot of confidence, Jim Harbaugh, and his team going into that year, and you didn't know. But I think it'd be very, very impressive this year if Michigan's able to pull off a great season, given all that they lost to the NFL and all that they lost from the coaching staff, also to the NFL. 7 assistant coaches, perhaps the best coach in college football as well, would be pretty incredible. Should we talk food and alcohol options at the Big House this year? Anthony,
I'm always down to talk food and alcohol. So,
what was the best food you tasted at the Big House? We got to go for the tasting the other day.
Oddly enough, I think it was the elotes corn dog that stuck out to me. Oh, it's on screen here. Other things we had, the brisket sandwich was pretty good. The bacon jam burger was probably the best thing.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think those would be my three. Duck pasty was okay. Um, didn't sample everything there just because we had work to do later on in the day, and I didn't need someone to roll me or ambulance me out of the Jack Ralph Stadium Club. But yeah, it's good stuff. One of the better days of the year. Every time we get the chance to sneak on up there and taste some of the things, and a lot of this stuff is going to be available on the concourse. I think the first couple food tastings I had done, which is funny. I was going through my phone earlier today, and I had one of those memories things. Like it says, "Oh, on this day 5 years ago." It was the first food tasting I had gone to there, and I think almost all of the items I had that first time around were just, club seating and the sweets and whatnot. Now, I mean, they have a lot of local vendors that are going to be kind of on the concourse, which is exciting for people because, as fun as it is to just get a hot dog or popcorn at a game, to kind of have all those options. I think that they really have stepped up their game on that front because, it costs a lot to go to a game now. So to kind of make it more of a premium experience where, yeah, maybe a ticket costs you a couple $100 for one of these big games, but you're not just going to have those options of popcorn or a hot dog. You can get some of this other cool stuff, and a lot of sort of local businesses on display too. Shout out Detroit Wing Company. They're going to be part of the proceedings this year. One of my favorite spots in the area. So I think the spotlight on some of the local businesses and not just, okay, we're having, this national chain do our pizza. We're having this national chain do our burgers and hot dogs. I think it's pretty cool. And I think they've taken a lot of that feedback to heart, which I think is good for fans.
Yeah, it seems like they've stepped up their game, but let's get to the fun stuff. The fun stuff is the alcohol, which will be served all over the stadium for the first time this year. They tried it out, or not tried it out. They started it at basketball games and hockey games starting January 1. So the back half of those two seasons, if you've been to games, for those, you've already potentially indulged if you wanted to, if you're 21, if you're responsible. But they will have beer, I believe wine, and then canned cocktails on the concourse. And then if you're in a club, I think they may have like full bars type of thing as well. Cocktails outside of just canned cocktails. Prices start for beers, 16-ounce domestics at $12.25. They will have 5 different, whether it's breweries or distilleries, but 5 different companies bringing in alcohol from the state of Michigan. Founders is one of them. They're also serving the Founders bratwurst. So Michigan fans will they'll be feeling pretty good during the games. I know they already do, and every college football fan, right, if they want to, the tailgate is there for them to do that. But it should be nice to be able to get a beer, keep the party rolling through the games. I would imagine some people are going to enjoy that, and I would imagine I'm going to be kind of jealous seeing these people walk around with their 12.25 16-ounce domestics.
Well, again, beer prices pretty much are what they are when you go to any stadium now. So, I mean, not that I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. Like, if you are a drinker and you're looking to get after it, do your thing out in the tailgates. Come inside, get your maintenance beer, maybe 2 maintenance beers, and have yourself a day. So I think that's the way to go. At least from my perspective. For us, we're stone cold sober, locked in, hydrated, caffeinated, ready to go when we're up there in the press box. So
yeah, I usually sober up by game time. Sure. Yeah.
Usually, especially, those noon games, you got to get up and get after it a little earlier. So
it's true.
Clayton, sometimes you got to kind of straighten the hair out a little bit and wash your face, but usually pulls it together by game time.
It's usually Diet Coke and iced coffee, and they got a nice iced coffee maker up there for us. So should be fun. Hope Michigan fans enjoy what's coming to the Big House this year. Certainly a premium slate of games, and sounds like a premium slate of food and beverage options. And Anthony, football starts next week with week 0. I was looking at the week 0 slate. There's really only one good game. I think there are only 4 games total, but Florida State at Georgia Tech in Dublin, those two fan bases going to Ireland. and just taking over the pub scene, which I would like to go to Ireland at some point. It just seems like an incredible thing too. I would love to just watch them do that.
Yeah, Montana State at New Mexico. I'm going to bet all these games, by the way. SMU at Nevada, Delaware State at Hawaii. Yeah, I mean, it kind of starts off on a high note to start that day. And can we talk about the week 0 thing for a second? Like, can we just call it week 1 or opening weekend? Like the week 0, like there is no, like 0 is nothing. 0.
But then we'd have to call week 1 week 2, and I don't like that because like there are only 4 games this week or the next week.
Yeah, I don't know. Can we just call it opening weekend? Like I don't know. It's just a nitpick of mine. You got week 0 when there's games going on. You've got a Big Ten that's 18 teams. Like the math around all of this just doesn't make sense.
It's true. It's week -1 right now, so we're inching closer. But it should be exciting. Maybe next week will be the debut of one of our best segments, No Man Knows the Future, in which we will pick some games. I would imagine maybe just Florida State at Georgia Tech, but we will be picking games throughout the college football season. On this show, we'll be giving our Michigan score predictions, our preview shows coming up in just 2 weeks to get ready for Fresno State. So it should be an exciting time. We got a couple more weekends before football starts, but it should be very fun once it does get up and running. Anthony Broom, Clayton Safey here on the Wolverine.com podcast. Thank you so much for watching. And again, like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel as well. We're closing in on 30,000 subscribers, and head to the Wolverine.com. Promo code UM1 gets you 2 months of premium access, all the message board stuff. Have conversations with Michigan fans on there, as well as get behind the paywall for all of our intel and premium content for 2 months for just $1 using the promo code UM1. We'll see everyone on Monday night.